I've been re-obsessing over 9.5 weeks. Got any favorites of the erotic thriller genre? I think I remember you doing an analysis about Belle de Jour. I love Belle de Jour. I also love 9.5 weeks, dude. That's so good. What's the what it was like a 9.5 weeks ripoff. Was it called like Two Moon Junction? That was fun too. Make sure it's called Two Moon Junction. That sounds like a sexy name. You can count a lot of De Palma in there, right? Body Doubles, certainly an erotic thriller. I know I love Belle de Jour. Don't know how thrilling I'd call that though. It's definitely erotic and surreal. It's one of the few surreal films that I really like. Buñuel's the only surrealist I really like, and I still have a lot of problems with Buñuel. Erotic thriller. It's a genre I haven't devoted a whole lot of time to. So I need someone to remind me what they are. Oh, Eyes Wide Shut is so good. Okay. That's definitely a favorite erotic thriller. Sliver. Last Seduction. Last Seduction's so good. Linda Fiorentino, is that her name? The girl from Dogma. She's amazing, super sexy. I love her in that movie. Don't really know what happened to her. I think she was difficult to work with or something. I don't really like Basic Instinct too much. Fatal Attraction's fun. Yeah, Body Doubles here. Is there any other one I like? It's a good genre. Bound was good. Here's a question. Why were erotic thrillers so Color of Night, dude? I love Color of Night. I remember I wasn't allowed to watch that movie on VHS when I was a kid because of how erotic it was, but I was really into Bruce Willis movies, so I remember like stealing it from my parents' collection and going off to watch the cool Bruce Willis Color of Night movie and just, oh my God, really shouldn't have done that. But it's probably not that great, but I have nostalgia and sentimentality for it. Color of Night's really cool. But I guess my question was, why do you think erotic thrillers were so popular within the 80s and 90s? Because I feel like a movie like Color of Night or Basic Instinct, even, they would just be exploitation movies in the 70s, So like what about the erotic thriller was so interesting? Was it like, what was it speaking to? Like, what were the marriage rates like in the 80s and 90s? Was that when like people were really starting to get divorced en masse? I'm sure it has something to do with like video rentals also becoming cooler, like VHS rentals, home media becoming a thing. And like, are these erotic thrillers, like, are they mostly made for men or are they mostly made for women? Are they tapping into like, because if they're made for men, it's about how like your sexual appetite will be your destruction. Right? And if it's about women, it's actually like empowering by weaponizing their eroticism to destroy a man's obsession over them. So like the erotic thriller is something that probably deserves to be studied and probably has been studied. I think so. But what's my favorite erotic thriller? If you're counting Belle de Jour, then it's Belle de Jour. I love that film to death. The more I think about Belle de Jour, the more it becomes a favorite of mine. Maybe next time I do a top 10 favorite films, Belle de Jour will be there. I think it's really special and beautiful. And a strikingly perfect film for me is Belle de Jour. But Eyes Wide Shut, I guess. Eyes Wide Shut, I think is more purely an erotic thriller. I think the rise of co-ed corporate yuppie culture has a lot to do with it, if that makes sense. I think that absolutely makes sense because one of the biggest guys for the erotic thriller was Michael Douglas, right? And I associate him directly with Wall Street, which is probably, ironically, yuppie culture's like credo. Gordon Gekko became like a hero of the yuppie movement, which is like what, the second or third time Oliver Stone accidentally like made immortal that which he was criticizing. He did that in Scarface as well, which is a critique of capitalism. And then every wannabe fucking drug kingpin thinks it's the coolest movie ever. And then Wall Street, it's another critique of capitalism, of corporate greed. And everyone wants to be fucking Gordon Gekko saying greed is good. So that's funny. But when I think of Michael Douglas, I think of Wall Street or Basic Instinct, Fatal Attraction. And then he even spoofed that with War of the Roses with Danny DeVito, the amount of erotic thrillers he was in. So I think you're onto something, considering that Michael Douglas is kind of like the poster boy, the poster child of 80s yuppie culture and 90s. And he's normally the one who is the star of those movies, at least the most successful ones. And I mean, are we looking into like, yeah, I like to stick with that for a minute. Because Belle de Jour was focused on certain things as well, that the perversions of the bourgeois. So like, are we saying that erotic thrillers explore the perversions of the bourgeois too, like in a similar way? Maybe. I think the news culture scandal was popping up at that time, also propaganda to not destroy the nuclear family. Yeah, that's why I was asking what like the marriage rates were. I think you're right, Nessie, as well, because I think divorce was starting to become pretty commonplace, right? And scandal, you're right. That's when, news culture. We had some pretty big stories then, right? Do we think that like it could be propaganda to not destroy the nuclear family, but they'd be really bad at that propaganda, like kind of fed into it. Kind of fed into the perversions. Like, seeing Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct can give you a whole new slew of perversions to leave your wife over. Like, if that's the case, then they made terrible propaganda. Like, I think that men at their horniest have this sort of death wish, you know? Like, so like maybe cinema at its horniest is like completely buys into that death wish. Like every single male protagonist of a Brian De Palma film like wants to fucking self-immolate in like the horniest way. Eyes of corporate, co-ed corporate, yeah. Like Working Girl was like one fucking step away from being an erotic thriller. I'm thinking of even like the other just normal romances of the late 80s, early 90s. Erotic thrillers became popular because they explored the contradictions of the Reagan era, which was politically conservative but culturally trashy. These films captured the anxieties and excesses of yuppie culture in stylized yet messy commercial products. They also built on the world of classic film noir, blah, 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 blah. To reflect the cultural fear of AIDS, I'd say it's in contrast to the political climate of the time. Maybe it has to be a couple different factors, though. It can't just be like that. It's not like when Bush was in office, we got a bunch of erotic thrillers again. Like it also has to be the time of the video rental. And maybe even like because I don't know. I don't want to think about it too much. I don't want to spend too much time on erotic thrillers, but I think it is interesting. I just my brain's in the opposite place lately. And I mean George W. Bush, not his dad. Should have got a bunch of erotic thrillers then. Trump era fucking films should have been both culturally trashy and politically trashy. We should have had a fucking renaissance of garbage, but we didn't. Who knows? Access normalization of sexual liberation has something to do with it too. Exactly. Exactly. I That's what I'm saying, Ruben. That's exactly what I'm saying. Popularization of pornography could be a factor. That's what I'm getting at with video rentals, because like Hollywood used to have like the that sex appeal on tap, and like now at the video rental store, you can go to like the secret room in the back and get exactly what you actually want. So like I think films were becoming more pornographic, which is directly connected to access and normalization of sexual liberation is the popularization of pornography. And I don't know. I think it is convenient. A lot of writers, when they look back, if there's like a controversial conservative leader at the time, they will try to pin every problematic genre on their presidency, which I don't think is like the best thing to do. I think it's more access, normalization, sexual. This is what I was trying to do with video rentals. I couldn't really word it, you know, because I wouldn't even necessarily call most of the erotic thrillers trashy. You know, I don't think that pornography is inherently trashy either. I think that's an awkwardly conservative position to have when you're criticizing Reagan era politics, personally.